Well, thank you all so much for attending this incredible session for the first National Legislative Summit by the National Black Professional Lobbyists Association. I'm Reverend John Heath, a founding father, co-founder, along with Greg Jones and Yolanda Cass Jackson. And we've got a dynamic panel for you today that's going to lay out state legislative outlooks from around the country. We have leadership, we've got a speaker, we've got the national leader of the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, we've got the chairman of the corporate roundtable of NBCSL. And so you're going to just be enriched. Let me take a founder's and a point of personal privilege as a founder. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And make sure that you drop your thoughts and your questions because there will be a Q&A. But I want to take some personal founder's privilege and thank my speaker, my dear friend, someone who I love and cherish, Speaker Adrian Jones, who's a history maker in the state of Maryland, who took the time in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of all the incredible challenges that she has in leading that body and doing one of her pastors a great favor. She has been incredible to me for years. And Madam Speaker, I could not leave this introduction without giving you my personal thanks. But now we're going to put you in the hands of one of the Peach State's finest. He is an intelligent, he is a savvy individual. But what you'll find with these incredible panelists is they are not only great in their field as elected officials and in the corporate arena, but Billy Mitchell is one of those good men. And what I want to leave you with before I get off and let these folks do what they do, whether it's Representative Camper, whether it's Speaker Jones, whether it's Representative Billy Mitchell, and the esteemed Patrick Hanna Esquire. These are incredible people. So what I want to share with you, even in this midst of being a lobbyist and lawmaker, it is a season now where nice guys and nice ladies are no longer finishing last. We're like Kalen Carr says, we're in our winning season. So be kind, be nice, be integral. And these people prove that you can make it to the top by doing right. Representative Mitchell, take us on.
And that's Reverend John Heath. So everything he said was absolutely the truth. I will tell you, Brother John Heath, that was perhaps the second best introduction of me. The best having occurred not too long ago. I was speaking somewhere, and the person who was to introduce me did not show up. So I had to introduce myself. And so you should have heard all the great things I had to say. But very truly, I appreciate your generous introduction. And I will tell you this, I was so excited to be a part of this panel. We truly, in the words of Reverend John Heath, this is truly an extraordinary assemblage, if you will, of great talent and intellect. And I'm so glad that we have a leader from the majority party in Maryland as the speaker, and we have the leader from the minority party in Tennessee, so that we can see the contrast. And then, of course, we can't do anything unless we have our corporate entities weighing in as well. So I think this is going to be a very meaningful discussion for many of our folk here on the panel. Let me just start out with the speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't know how good it is to look at a Black woman and say, Madam Speaker. As NBCSL, the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, I've had the opportunity to go see Karen Bass sworn in when she was Speaker of California. And now she was on the short list being considered for president. That's one of the beautiful things about this organization. But give me, if you will, handling the day-to-day operation of the chamber as the Speaker of the House. Now, the Speaker, tells us where we can sit, where our offices are here in Georgia, where we can park. Tell me, what is it like, the day-to-day operations of being Speaker in a state like Maryland?
Well, thank you, and thank you to our fellow panelists and Reverend John Heath and everyone in putting this together. What I would tell you how it is different now that we're in the pandemic than if it were normal times. So during the pandemic, we had to make a whole lot of changes. We, just like a lot of legislatures, we stopped. We ended session in March, last March, and we've been meeting through committee. We had not met as a body as yet. Our session for this year started January 13th, but what we did during the interim from March and that, we've been having committee hearings, and I've been holding what we had to vote on as a pro forma sessions, which essentially is getting the bills to the appropriate committees. And the committees, everything is live streamed, just like currently what's going on now. So we still were able to get some key pieces of legislation. I think there's over like 500 bills that our members had put forward. And a lot of it had to deal with the situation where we're in COVID types of bills. So, and as the first African-American woman, you mentioned about Congresswoman Karen Bass, who I did meet with. She was the first. The second was Sheila Oliver, who is the Lieutenant Governor in
Jersey now.
and Mitch. There's only three of us.
Mhm.
And three African-American women ever were speaker. We got a new African-American male speaker in Illinois. And you fellows, you got 11. You got 11 fellows from Reconstruction up that that are speakers now. So you put that together, and the total in this country since its beginnings, and they're not talking about Reconstruction, because in Reconstruction there were Black males who were speakers. There's only 14 of us together in the history of this country, and we're scrutinized more than ever. And I took the opportunity to put together what I felt that I'm the only person. I'm the 107th speaker in the Maryland House, and the 106 speakers before me were all white males. And the agenda that I was putting forth, they never would have thought of. I am putting forth a Black agenda, and so I don't know how long you want me going, but I don't know how much time do we have or anything, but
we're gonna come to all of that, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, but I'm gonna stop now. So, but there's a lot of things but how we're doing now is different than how we would have been when I first became speaker. So I'm going to stop talking. So we're going to the other.
We're going to capture much more of that. Okay. Let me go to the minority leader in Tennessee. You heard how they're handling things in the majority in Maryland. Is anything different how you're handling things in Tennessee as the minority party?
Of course. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this panel. I was excited about the fact that this summit was going on, and to be invited to participate has really warmed my heart, because I have a special place in my heart for the work that our Black lobbyists are doing. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Yes, things are a little different when you're in the minority. When I came into the Tennessee General Assembly, we were in the Democrats was in the super majority. So we were 67 and we're down to 26. So it looks a little different. Again, like you say, I was the first African-American elected to this position. and first woman as well, the African-American woman elected to this position. And it's a lot of responsibility on you to make sure that you are working with the majority to move your agenda. So relationships are important. And fortunately for me being in this position, over the years, I have built these relationships well before I even thought about this as a possibility for me. And so some of that has helped me in terms of trying to move not only our caucus's agenda, which is what that position requires me to do, but as an African American being in this position, there's a lot of pressure on me to ensure that our values are also understood, recognized, and pushed forward, and even in the minority, because our issues as African Americans cross all party lines. There's no party associated with it. These are issues that are important and have been relevant for us for so many years. And I do think that at this moment in time in history, we have a great opportunity before us, not only at the state level with, you've seen where African Americans in the minority, and particularly some of the southern states, have risen to a minority leader and caucus chairman. And so now there's a responsibility on us to move our agendas forward, like the speaker was about to discuss. So it is a little different being in a minority, but the minority have a responsibility. We are responsible to keep the majority in check, to hold them responsible for their actions, to ensure that the people's business is still heard, to ensure that we are, procedurally right. We're not abridging people's rights simply because we're in a minority party. So there's a role for the minority. And so I look forward to represent my caucus in that minority as it pertains to pushing, moving legislation and making sure that their voices are heard up and down, from the subcommittee all the way up to floor operations. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve on this panel and look forward to the discussion we're going to have as we move forward. You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
You can't hear.
How am I doing now? It certainly brings me an honor to introduce and bring on into this discussion Mr. Patrick Hanna, President of the National Black Caucus of State Legislators Corporate Roundtable. I will tell you that he is an extraordinary corporate roundtable partner and visionary. And Patrick, I want to bring you into this and find out, when it comes to the legislative process, how are you engaged? How do you get the points across that are important from a corporate standpoint across to legislators such as Leader Camper and Speaker Jones?
Thank you, President Mitchell. And it's such an honor to be on this panel with this esteemed group of public policy makers and leaders. Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so as chairman of the Corporate Roundtable, I am honored to have an opportunity to partner with over 700 legislators who represent 70 million constituents under your leadership, President Mitchell. And so this is an exciting opportunity to come together. One of the things that, to answer your specific question, I think that why it matters is to get those points across, you have to have a relationship, right? It starts with having a meaningful relationship. And so one of the things that I've always worked to do, and our over 105 member companies on the Corporate Roundtable, we really appreciate the opportunity to build that relationship with all of our legislators across the country to be able to have an impact on creating jobs for our community. The economic justice discussion continues. You all on the front lines fighting for us each and every day at the legislature. And so on behalf of our members, thank you for all you have done to allow us to have these opportunities to represent the organizations. I also want to thank the founders of this association, Greg, Yolanda, Pastor Heath, you all are doing an amazing job. And with the President Mitchell's support, I think we've got some opportunities for the Corporate Roundtable to partner with you, because our members, they should be a part of this organization in a meaningful way. And so I'm happy to be a part of this dialogue today in order to shine a light on why it matters to have legislators, to have a relationship with lobbyists that look like me.
Mhm. You know, President Hanna, let me just ask you this before we go back to the legislators. I call this a season where everyone loves Black folk, but not all corporate entities really recognize their corporate responsibility to really get engaged with communities that need their help, and certainly organizations like ourselves. Why is your company so interested in being engaged, and they are, in the legislative process?
Well, it's a good question. You know, every company approaches relationships in a different way. I can only speak for the one that I represent. We take that responsibility very seriously. I have the privilege of serving as senior counsel for the 70th largest company in the world with over 11 jurisdictions. Georgia and Tennessee is one of them. I don't have Maryland, but happy to have a chance to meet with the speaker at any time. But I really do think the company's culture is what drives their engagement. It starts at the top. And I think our C-suite has done an incredible job making sure that we maintain that responsibility as a large financial services company. But I do think we have an opportunity to do better. At the end of the day, companies need to recognize that having a relationship with legislators from all backgrounds matters in order to have systemic change in public policy. It does require a meaningful relationship.
Okay, before I go into the legislature, you can mention your company name.
My company?
Yes, you mentioned.
Liberty Mutual.
Great. Let me just ask you this, Speaker Jones and Leader Camper, in these pandemic times, and we'll start off with you, Speaker Jones, how can lobbyists build that effective relationship and provide the information that they seek to give? How are you doing that in Maryland in these times?
Well, just as what we're doing on this forum through Zoom calls. And we have both the lobbyists and their clients that are on the call. And actually it's sort of working out pretty good, particularly with some new clients that they may have, because with a Zoom call, usually we'll get information ahead of time, exactly what it is, because they want to make sure that they look good before their clients. So, and we have a very good relationship, and actually it's more so now because you can get more on a call and you can get, both the clients and the client and who their lobbyist is. So, and it's working out, pretty well. And it's, in Maryland, I'm sure other places as well. So it's
Mm-hmm. Can a lobbyist just call up and say, I'd like to have a Zoom meeting with you that you don't know?
that I don't know.
Yes.
I would need to know something about instead of words code, but usually sometimes they'll send an email and saying if they're new, but most of them, we know. I've been legislature since '97, so I'm pretty old. So I know.
You started when you were about 17, 18.
Yes, I was child prodigy. Yeah. No, but you get to know them, and but cold is usually not what happens, particularly if you're a lobbyist. And I'm sure Patrick Hanna can attest to that you want to develop that kind of relationship, and sometimes they'll do intel on us, and we'll do intel on them, talk to other people who had dealings with them. So, and I think that it's probably because this is the way we have to communicate. You're really getting a whole lot more information, particularly as someone who's new coming in. So,
Leader Camper, and how are you interacting in these pandemic times? Are you doing anything different? What's going on in Tennessee as it relates to the lobbyists who wish to have access and build those relationships?
Yeah, I have to agree with the speaker. One of the things that I've always appreciated over the years with the lobbying arm, if you will, of our world is the amount of research and data that they can provide us to help us in our decision making. And I would go sometime in the community to speak, and I'm always talking about the arm of the lobbyist. And so some people think, oh, your favorite lobbyists. No, they have a role because they represent a group of people that are sometimes you. And so you would want me to understand and appreciate that point of view. So I've always kind of took that attitude in dealing with lobbyists to understand and appreciate where they're coming from. And so I agree that in a world of COVID-19, Zoom and whatever other platform has become a way of life for us. But we have been able to learn more because, like she said, not only is the lobbyist there, but the company that they represent are there. And sometimes they represent several companies or trade organizations or, different industries. And so that we're able to bring all that together sometime on just a simple call like this versus trying to schedule a time in the office. So I do believe it's given the more access, to each other to learn, understand, and appreciate, the topic, the issue as we move forward, even in framing, how we, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so that's a value that they can bring in. So it's been good. It's been working good. I have several set up now. Going forward, like next week I was planning another meeting. I said, well, let me check my calendar. And sure enough, I had a few set up with one particular lobbying company, but they represent so many companies. So it's been very beneficial.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Go right
That's
ahead.
okay. Yes, sir.
I think that's an excellent point. It's something that I think often is overlooked in this profession is that there is a fundamental difference between being a corporate representative and then a lobbyist with a book of business. And I think both of those positions are important, just as you
Tell us the difference.
Well, the difference is that when you represent a company, your sole focus is on that one company. But when you have a professional practice that has a suite of companies that they represent, it could be anything from utilities to financial services to education to criminal justice reform. So Rep. Camper is making a good point. And I think part of this organization's uniqueness, the ubiquitous nature of this business, is that there's not enough people that look like us to do this work, whether it's corporate or contract. And so
yes, sir.
The vision that these founders have had is extraordinary because we need more people on both sides of the practice, in-house as well as outside counsel.
Yeah, but just wonderful. We're going to start shouting in here now. Leader Camper, let me tell you a story, speaker Adrian Jones, that you may appreciate. Former president of this organization, legislator in your state, the name is really not important. I just want to use the example. She's got herself into some difficulty, but I will tell you what I know of this person. I'd be willing to trade a day of my life for her freedom. I wouldn't trade much more than that, but I'd certainly trade a day in my life to ensure some freedom. But what I knew of this person, she was extraordinary. But I remember shortly after she was elected mayor from the legislature, she was elected mayor, myself and another legislator, Calvin Smari, I don't know if you know, many on this call do, we went to visit the mayor. And we were just shooting the breeze, congratulating, having a good time. An appointment came up where there was some folks that were into pension funds and the like. They came to her door. I remember getting up, getting ready to leave. She asked myself and this other legislator, no, just stay, you can be a part of this meeting. And these 3 or 4 gentlemen came in and she asked them, do you have any Black folks on your staff? Oh man, they stumbled through that because it was 4 white men. They stumbled through this. Well, we don't have any this department or that department, or we're going to bring in some folks for this department. You know what she said to them? She said, oh, okay, that's fine. Come back when you get some. And I mean, it was the amazing thing to see. She literally said, okay, y'all can come back to talk to me when you get some. And they left. I talked to her a couple of weeks later, and she said they brought so many Black folks to the next meeting that they had hired. You would have thought it was a NAACP convention, she said. And I just appreciate the power that we have that sometimes we don't appreciate in ourselves, because the reality is, even in the minority in Tennessee, certainly in the majority in Maryland, they can't get certain things done without our votes and our input. And it's a great time to make certain that we explore opportunities for folks who look like us, because with that, the diversity of opinion comes a diversity in product, and a better product, in my opinion. You have any similar stories like that, Speaker Jones? You're on mute.
Yes, I got it. Quite a few, because I know who you're referring to. She was in the Senate one time, in the House. But there are, I always like to me, everyone has something that they're gifted in. And sometimes you don't know that until you get to talking with them, and may say something, talk about someone who may not be a lobbyist. And then they'll embark on a whole lot of information that you may not have thought about that aspect of on a particular subject matter. And I always find that really, very helpful, because I try to look at things in a broad spectrum, not one viewpoint. And the people that, even during this pandemic times, and they be watching and listening what's happening with us in the General Assembly in terms of what we're doing. And then they'll say, well, I have someone that would be ideal for that, because I put out that I want, to make our corporate boards, if they're getting state money, but I won't get into that, because I won't talk about that later. But I find it, even though we're in this pandemic, I'm finding and meeting so many people who may not have had opportunity had it not been in the pandemic, in terms of what they can offer. If you understand what it's been really refreshing. It sounds strange, but it is. And I noticed that when say companies or they want to make sure that there is someone that looks like me. I see that more so now than in the past, because I think in the past it was just taken for granted that you're going to do, and I know that, because I'm very observant. I can read people, that this is not the case anymore, and they really had to be about something, and make sure that they have people that there's the diversity within their groups. And it's been fantastic, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of finally somebody is seeing the light, so to speak. And so I think it's wonderful. I'll defer to my good friend.
Yes, Leader Camper. What have you seen any differences or opportunities for more Black lobbyists to get engaged as a result of your service?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the question. I remember one time there was a very, sweeping legislation that was going through, and I don't know if I was just a holdout or what, but they kept coming to me about this bill, and I was like, well, I need somebody African American talking to me, because there are things that I'm concerned about, whether African Americans are going to get access to jobs, to contracts, and it was a sweeping piece of legislation. And of course, I wasn't even in leadership at this point. I'm just like, I need to see somebody Black. And true enough, it was like, oh, okay, got you. Next thing I know, guy make appointment, comes to me, is like, what did you say to so and so? Have they called me, talking about they need to hire me to come talk to you? So, okay, God is good. But look, here's the other piece to that. We need a pipeline. So it's not just that same one that they go to. It's not just that one Black lobbyist. I want to see more at the table. So one of the things I've been trying to do here is reach out to people that's in this world so that we can have a list, a reservoir of people that we can call, and bring into the fold. And also, as a part of my Day on the Hills and some of my mentoring that I do with my interns, is I always bring in a Black lobbyist to come talk to them about the field. And because a lot of them, they're not thinking about it. They don't even know that this is a career that they could have and could be great at it. And so that's been very beneficial. I've had so many young college students now thinking about this as a career, but they remembered on my Day on the Hill when they came up as a high school student that, Marlene Sanders talked to them, that Sandra Keys talked to them, that Melvin Malone talked to them, so Theo Moore, they talked to them. And so now they see themselves in this role. And so I think more of them are getting interested in it. And this organization could be a great organization to help us push that forward. So I'm excited about the possibilities we have now that this is more on the radar. Life has been shown on it, and people are more excited about it, especially our younger folks, our college students. They're excited about it.
Wonderful. Let me just say this to our participants. If you have a question or comment, you can drop it in the chat or even raise your hand. We'd love to entertain your comments and questions as well. So just drop them in the chat or raise your hand. Patrick, I've often wondered, and I find that the better companies are cognizant of the issues that confront the communities in which they wish to serve. And I don't believe all companies have a Patrick Hanna in their midst who not only understands what our communities need, but literally engages in that community. Sometimes, when I see corporations who wish to affect legislation, I just say, I wish I could be in their boardroom to see what they're discussing when they make certain decisions. One comes to mind not too long ago. The president of Wells Fargo stated publicly that he was having difficulty finding African Americans to fill his top executive positions. I would love to be in the boardroom where they discuss issues like that would allow him to say something like that. How is it at your corporation? How do you discuss issues that are important, that need to get out in front of Black legislators and for the good of the community?
Yep, Mr. President, it's a good question. And I think that one of the things that you have to really look at is, where a company sits from a standpoint of its values, what the track record is. Every company has a culture. And one of the things that I can speak to is that we try to do is have a collaborative culture where opinions matter. And some of these companies that you just listed, I don't represent them, so I can't speak to them, but I think those examples are out there. We see the news, and it's not just of one occasion. That company you just mentioned has been in the news for other matters. And so I think the culture matters, the values that the company sets out, and the organizations have to start at the C-suite to determine how they want to present themselves when it comes to work with public policymakers. I think Rep. Camper makes an excellent point from a standpoint of the examples that she just used, the impression that you all have. Look, we wouldn't have these opportunities, I said in my opening remarks, to represent these large companies without you, right? And so I always say in my remarks at the corporate roundtable and before our 105 member companies, thank you. Thank you for doing what you do. But to Rep. Camper's point, we do need to create a pipeline. And I think PLA has an opportunity to build that pipeline. It has an opportunity to create a designation to be a certified lobbyist. There's so many program opportunities partnering with universities, create a designation. That's how you build your pipeline up. And then if you want to be in the Capitol every day, you can work with a practice, work with the Greg Jones, work with the Yolanda Cash Jackson and others in these major jurisdictions. And there are countless other examples, or if you want to be, as they say, in the in-house from the standpoint of government affairs. I'm actually in the legal department, and so my practice is a little bit different. I do legislative and regulatory work, but also do some work with the litigation department. So I think there's so many opportunities that are there, and that's why this conversation matters today.
Great. Let me do this. We have a question, and the question, I think it's from Makita McClune. What are the opportunities, and what would one looking for a career change do to become a lobbyist? If they don't have a law degree or they're not a former elected official, what can that person do? Speaker Jones, let me start off from you. I want to be a lobbyist, don't have a law degree, not a former elected official. How do you suggest I go about it?
Well, I'm certain that there aren't lobbying schools. So only thing I would have them just, as students and college students, et cetera, they do, they'll intern in businesses. I would suggest that they would try to get some kind of internship or shadow program with a lobbyist in the field of interest that they may have, and and learn from the best by actually talking to a lobbyist that looks like them, because they would be the best resource in terms of what they had to go through to get to where they are. So I would start there. And also I would tell them, particularly people, to get have a area of interest that piques them, that's interest, that is something that they would like to pursue, knowing more information about. And like I said, as I said earlier, everyone has something that they're gifted in. They just need to find that, hone it, and there's the resources there for them to try to achieve where they want to go. People are willing and want to give advice, particularly if someone has an interest in the field that they are an expertise in.
Leader Camper, I come to you. I'm interested in getting into lobbying. What would you advise them?
Well, I agree with the speaker about interning at some of these organizations. But what I have done, honestly, is introduce them to people that's in that field and have asked them to have a meeting with them, expose them to, what it entails. But, they're at the local level, just think about, government relations at the city level, right? So I could reach out to a council person or to a mayor and say, hey, what type of internship program do you have where young people can come and volunteer and work and get exposed in government relations just at the local level. So, they're not worried about having to come to Nashville. I passed a bill, oh God, a few years ago to try to establish actually an intern program with our county government to allow young people to come and intern in the county government affairs office. And they gave them a stipend. Oh, it was great. So that's, so I would introduce them to the mayor. I would, try to, let them know about programs that's available at the intern level. But if I'm past that and I'm an older citizen and I've, done a lot, I probably got my paralegal. I got some interest here. I would try to get them to connect with somebody that's in the business and then allow them to pick their brains. I just think over the years of being here, over a decade now, and just the thousands of lobbyists that I have met and all of the relationships that I have built. And they'll say, what can I do to help you?
Absolutely.
Here's a person that want to replace you one day.
Yeah.
Will you sit down and talk to them? So I try to make personal connections for people that's interested in this line of work.
Great. Before I come back to you, Patrick, I will tell you, there was a intern that we had in Georgia. She worked as an intern for our local Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. From there, she applied for an admin position in the GLBC, the Legislative Black Caucus office. She was a member of the staff section of NBCSL. From that admin position, she became our executive director. After a few years as our executive director, she has been hired by one of the largest lobbying firms in Georgia to be on their staff. And that was about 3 or 4 years ago. She was taken away from us and hired. Today, she is vice president of that firm. So she came from making minimum wage to where now she pays our way. So the reality is there are great opportunities for those who wish to be a part of it. Let me just ask you this, Patrick, as president of the Corporate Roundtable, is there an advantage for the lobbyists that are on this call, the members of this organization, to be a part of the National Black Caucus of State Legislators Corporate Roundtable?
Yeah, I think so. I think that when you think about the impact that you all just so eloquently stated, that example you just gave, President Mitchell, there are countless of examples like that across the country where you all have been building a pipeline for us to have these opportunities. I think that the challenge has been that it's been decentralized, and hopefully the NBPLA can use this organization to really bring all those real life examples together and create sort of a pipeline for talent. But absolutely, I think that there's a local strategy, there's a state strategy, and then there's a national strategy. But as I said earlier, there are 105 companies that are members of the Corporate Roundtable, and the majority of them look like us. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to collaborate under your leadership. So we definitely want to figure out how we do that with this association in a meaningful way.
Let me ask you this, Speaker Jones, give me the top issue that's befronting you this session. What you got going on that seems to going to corral a lot of your attention and wrangling of your members and negotiation with the minority party?
We have done a COVID relief packet. This is based on a lot of the calls we got from citizens regarding not getting the unemployment. They're unable to, when students are at home, and a lot of them don't have access to broadband, and so we have legislation to several pieces of legislation that address what came as a result of this pandemic. We also have done, I formed shortly after we shut down our session in March, a police reform and accountability work group. And they have completed their work, and they're doing several pieces of legislation in terms of, we had the public had input. Also, we had law enforcement have, their say as well. Repealing the law enforcement officers Bill of Rights, and looking at standards for accountability, a series of areas that came up during those hearings. We also, as I mentioned, as I started to say early on, for the last, I think August, I was meeting with several national and local and state official on this Black agenda. And I look at it as that, and if not me, who? And there are, we have several pieces of legislation. Some of these things were like common sense that probably someone who do not look like any of us probably don't take it for granted that we did or didn't realize that we don't. And that is, some of those are, we dealing with inequities in housing, and we realize that there are credit and loan applicants are being denied. So just because of, they may have a different form of showing their credit worthiness, and that should be considered. So there's a bill on that. And we also found that you probably in your areas too, that when you go to sell your house in an appraisal, if it's, you know, a Black family, it's lower level than whites, and you know that has been tested. And we are creating a tax-free savings account to help first-time home buyers afford the high cost of a
Wow.
payment, closing costs, etc. We're adding a certified business enterprise account to help our minority companies compete for state bids. We're improving the state's procurement process and providing more technical resources to our minority businesses. And we're also establishing a health equity resource communities dedicated to closing gaps in our healthcare system. We also officially have declared racism a Black public health crisis and requiring all healthcare providers to complete bias training as part of their licensing process. And there's some other things. These just give you a little, little touch of what we're dealing with. And I believe, like I said, if not now, when? And it's not me, who? So we're getting this done. Okay.
I'm impressed what's going on in Maryland. I'm telling you. In a lot of those issues that you raised are issues that lobbyists need to get involved in. You're talking about no interest loans, for instance. I'm sure the banking community, their lobbyists are talking to you quite a bit, and some of those other issues there, because you certainly need that advocacy on your side and that information on their side. Leader Camper, what are we dealing with in Tennessee as the minority party?
Thank you. It's interesting. We gathered in a couple weeks ago, and usually you come in, you do your organizational stuff, you start getting your bills in the pipeline. Well, we ended up in an emergency situation where the majority wanted to pass some legislation on Medicaid block grants, and they was trying to do that before Trump, left office, and it was very contentious, and it was a surprise on us that they did, and it was just kind of created a lot of tension right off at the beginning of our session. And of course, we wrote a letter to the Biden administration and said, okay, would you revert all of that? But anyway, that was like, welcome back to the Tennessee General Assembly, minority. And we also had a special session when we come in, we organize, we kind of go back, redo offices. You know how it is. You got to shuffle your offices around. You move here, you paint here, you get ready. And we had a special session dealing with education. And it was challenging too. Our views were a little different. And the point that I was, making to my colleagues on the other side and the governor, if you say you've been working on this all summer, and you say you want to have an impact on all of the citizens across this state, then you owe it to us to be a part of the conversation, because we have innovative ideas too. And we represent almost 2 million people whose voice was not at the table. And so we got to get past this minority majority point of view when it comes to things that's going to impact every citizen. So that's kind of how we started our session. But what I see happening is we have a lot of members, of course, that's concerned about unemployment insurance, COVID relief and protection. We have a really big music, tourism, live event economy here in the state of Tennessee. So we're going to have legislation to try to help in that arena. The other thing that I see happening is legislation around Black equity. If COVID have not shown us one thing, it did show us about the disparities and the inequitable way our governments have been working. And we need to begin to think about racial equity in our state and others. And so the other thing I think we need to do, as in my case, president of Nobel Women, and in your case, president of NBCSL, I think we need to put pressure on the Biden administration, who just did an executive order around racial equity. He needs to stand up an office that is dealing with this issue at the federal level. So that's something I think you and I should talk about, Representative. So we need to push him on that.
Yeah,
And we
absolutely.
need to be pushing it out. And so our Black Caucus chairman will probably be running that here. But what I did is reached out to my colleagues on the other side to say, hey, look, this is what we're expecting to do. You need to have an open mind. We have walked in shoes that you have never walked in before. So open your mind right now to hear and understand what we mean by racial equity and equality across the state, and how some of these laws that are on the books for years have had an impact on our people. Now, both of them said that they are willing to do that. So we've started the conversation to try to lay the groundwork. So when the bills come, we've done a lot of the groundwork. We've seeded the ground to make it fertile and make it right and ripe to harvest on some of this. So I know it's going to be a lot of energy around that. I've had bills before, one modeled after Maryland, as a matter of fact, the state of Maryland, the Small Business Reserve Program. It's like an 8-8 program at the state level. I have that bill. I had it last year, but COVID threw it off. But anyway, I'm going to bring that back, to help our small businesses. And we have some micro loan types of legislation and micro grant type of legislation for these small minority-owned businesses who didn't have access before because of whatever barriers were put before them. We need to start tearing that stuff down. Absolutely. So that's kind of going to be our focus, I believe, here, along with, with everything else my caucus is planning on doing. We support our caucus, we support our members, but there have to be priorities. Right. And I got to get everybody on board with these priorities to move us forward on racial equity. Great. And let me just plug Nobel Women while I got the mic. We talked about NBCSL and the corporate roundtable. Well, I've definitely got to show appreciation for our corporate advisory council, Yolanda Cash, who served as the vice chair, and Paula Hoisington, who serves as the chair, and they're doing a great job for Nobel, but we can surely use more corporate advisors on our council. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Glad you got your commercial in.
Hint.
Yeah, glad she's able to get her commercial in. We've got another question that this is perfect for you, Patrick. I'm telling you, this is fortuitous. This having you on to answer this question is worth whatever he paid for admission here. We've got two that are interrelated, so I'm going to give them both to you. As Vice President of Full Service Road, Bridge, and Infrastructure Company, I asked this is a different question. Here's the question for you, Patrick. How would an agreement between a private company and a lobbyist look? Is it a retainer agreement? Is that common? What does the relationship look like from the start there? And tell us, how does your company go about hiring lobbyists, and what does that agreement look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. All of these agreements are just different, right? If you're working for a law firm, it could be an hourly fee engagement. If it's a boutique contract lobbying firm that doesn't require any legal services, it could be a flat rate. And so it really just depends. It's hard to determine, how you want to structure those depending on what your issue is. If it's a long-term issue that's going to require a lot of meaningful engagement with public policy makers, I think you're going to have more of a long-term strategy. If it's something that just popped up, right? We have to remember we're coming out of a pandemic, right? And so all the attention that you all are addressing today is going to have something to do with COVID and how it impacts our community. And so I think that the COVID session is what all of these sessions will probably be focused on this year. The examples that Rep. Camper just highlighted, I think are absolutely critical. We do it very similar. Our practice, again, I'm in the legal department, and so we structure our terms and conditions typically like a firm would when you retain a law firm to represent you in any regulatory or legislative matter. But I think the broader question, to your point, President Mitchell, is not necessarily how one company does it, but just what's a good strategy for someone who's interested in coming into this profession, how they should look at structuring their contracts. And so you either do an hourly rate or you do a flat fee, and the market will dictate what those are. Every state's different. Retainers in Florida are a little different than in other states. It's a big market. And so it just depends on where you are and what your issue is.
Well, I don't believe that our time together is just about over. And I feel like, calling you all and continuing this discussion, Maryland does some extraordinary when it comes to minority participation in getting small and minority businesses contracting. As a legislator, I'm sure it's the same way with you all. Perhaps the number one question I get is, can you help me get a job, and/or can you help my company get a contract? And I hear that request more so than anything else. And so providing opportunities for folk to have an economy such that their businesses can flourish and their employment opportunities can flourish is one of the things that we all should be lobbying for, not only the Black Professional Lobbying Association. If you can give me a brief closing statement. I believe we got 2 minutes, so if you can give me 30-second closing statement. And before you do that, I want to say to you, Madam Speaker, I look forward to your involvement in the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. I have worked for you. Representative Camper, same way with you. And of course, President Hanna. Madam Speaker, give us a closing comment.
I found this hour that we have very enlightening, fulfilling, and I think it just shouldn't just stop here. I would like to keep the lines of communication open, as we're in our, our own circles, and then let's just be able to do that. We can call on each other. We're here or something. What is your thought? So,
absolutely.
For hosting this and the participants that are here.
Great. Leader Camp.
Oh, yes, thank you. Like many of you, we are focused on getting vaccines into the arms of our constituents. And me, as a retired warrant officer in the Army, I am grateful for our National Guard that has been in our helping out in this way. And like I said, we're going to be bringing civil rights legislation on various topics. And I look forward to all the things we're going to do. We got a long way to go, but we're going to keep climbing that mountain.
Thank you so much. Patrick Hanna, take us home.
Thank you all for allowing me to participate, and thank you for all you do for our communities across the country. We appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you so very much, Reverend John Heath and Terry Reynolds. We appreciate the opportunity to get this information to you members.